Good morning. Yes, we're into September already. It's Monday the 7th, and we're back like every Monday morning with our look ahead at the week's key economic highlights brought to you by Atlantic Capital Markets. As always, we'll start with a quick rundown of the key economic numbers being issued this week. We'll then dive into some of the more important stories afterwards with our own thoughts and analysis. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. So the economic numbers being issued this week start today with an update on global service PMIs, retail sales and investor confidence in the Eurozone. And also the 32nd meeting of OPEC takes place, which we'll discuss in more detail straight after this. On Tuesday, it's interest rate decision day in Australia, which we'll discuss in a moment, and Tuesday also brings updates on the German factory orders and US ISM services PMIs. And with domestic inflation currently laughing in the face of the Bank of England's 2% target, Governor Andrew Bailey faces the music in Parliament on Wednesday. We'll give our thoughts on this in more detail shortly. Wednesday is also interest rate decision day in Canada, as well as GDP updates in Australia and the Eurozone. It's also interest rate decision day in the Eurozone on Thursday, and we'll give our thoughts on this afterwards. And Thursday also brings the latest update on the US jobless claims. And Friday, we'll hear updates on Chinese inflation and jobs data over in Canada. And the companies that we'll hear trading updates from this week start today with Dechra Pharmaceuticals. On Tuesday, it's the turn of Ashtead, DS Smith and Enquest. On Wednesday, we'll hear from Barratt Development, GameStop, Asana. On Wednesday is Apple's annual shindig, where they'll be announcing any new product updates, and we'll give our thoughts on this later on in today's video. Thursday sees UK house builder Vistry release half-year results, as well as online legal documenter DocuSign releasing their Q2s, both of which we'll discuss later on. Thursday also sees the release of results from Melrose, Restaurant Group, Genus and Darktrace. And finally on Friday, we'll hear from CompuCenter. Well, energy has been a key focus in recent weeks and will remain under the spotlight as tight supply and rising prices feed the cost of living crisis. Over the weekend, Europe's energy crisis deepened as Russia keeps the Nord Stream pipeline shut indefinitely after the G7 moved to cap Russian oil prices. The prospect of gas rationing, slowing industry and impending recession in Europe will make the ECB's job to tame record inflation that much harder. The ECB isn't the only central bank in focus this week, with rate decisions from the Reserve Bank of Australia, the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England testifying before Parliament. It could be an interesting week. So let's take a look at some of these stories in more detail. Well, after 7 long, undeniably tedious weeks of campaigning, the Tory leadership battle ends, and much to, I'm sure, most of our relief, the new Tory leader and Prime Minister will at last be announced today. Liz Truss is the bookie's favourite. She promises tax cuts and no new taxes to help relieve the cost of living crisis, in contrast to Rishi Sunak, who considers that tax cuts could fuel inflation, but he's struggled to convince fellow MPs. Details from Liz Truss have so far been light, but she is expected to announce her strategy to support the country quickly. So do keep an eye on the pound and of course the FTSE as they react to today's announcement. And OPEC Plus also meet today to decide on oil production levels for October. The meeting comes after an OPEC report suggests that the oil surplus will be less than forecast in 2022 due to the underproduction of its members. Saudi Arabia has also floated the possibility of an oil output cut to stabilise prices. Oil prices have fallen over 10% in July and August. However, at this meeting, the most likely outcome is that oil output quotas will remain unchanged, particularly given fresh Western sanctions on Moscow, threatening Russian exports and keeping supply tight. The Reserve Bank of Australia is expected to announce a 5th straight 50 basis point rate hike on Tuesday, as inflation in Australia shows no signs of cooling yet. CPI is at 6.1%, a record in the second quarter, and more hikes will be needed to tame runaway prices. A 50 basis point hike would take the main lending rate to 2.35%, the highest level since December 2014. The biggest risk for the RBA is the Australian housing market, which is looking increasingly shaky as home loans fall and building approvals drop. In July, building approvals dropped by 17.2%. So, as a result, do keep an eye on the Australian dollar this week. On Wednesday, the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey and several Monetary Policy Committee members will testify before the Parliament's Treasury Committee. Bailey will take to the hot seat to defend the central bank's decisions after hiking interest rates by 50 basis points in the August meeting, its largest rate hike in 27 years, and as inflation reached double digits. The Bank of England expects inflation to continue rising and to peak at 13% in the coming months. Andrew Bailey's comments will be scrutinised for clues on the future path of interest rates. The pound US dollar trades around 2.5-year lows heading into the new week. And also on Wednesday, the keenly awaited annual Apple event is expected to see the company unveil the iPhone 14, a new Apple series, new AirPods Pro, as well as other products. The unveiling of the new products at Apple Cupertino headquarters comes as the share price has fallen almost 10% over the past 2 weeks as part of the broad sell-off in tech stocks as fears of a more hawkish Federal Reserve hit the stock. Still, the coming quarter with Thanksgiving and Christmas tends to be the top-performing quarter for the tech giant. That said, given surging prices and pressures on household incomes, this year could be exceptionally challenging. Well, it's interest rate decision day in the Eurozone on Thursday, and at the previous meeting in July, the ECB raised interest rates for the first time in 11 years, and did so by a larger than expected 50 basis points in its fight against soaring prices. Since the last meeting, inflation has climbed to a new all-time high of 9.1%. PPI inflation has risen to 37.9%, and gas prices have jumped. The ECB is widely expected to make another large rate hike at the meeting this month. The question is, will it be 50 or 75 basis points? The rate hike will come at a time when economic growth is slowing considerably and energy security has taken a turn for the worse as Russia switched off gas flow along Nord Stream 1 to Europe. The euro-dollar pairing currently trades below parity. Also on Thursday, UK house builder Vistry report their half-year results. In July, the company said it had an excellent first half of the year, beating its expectations. It built 3,219 homes in H1, and that's up slightly from the previous year. Sales continue to grow, up 11%. The focus will be on earnings, which are expected to come in at £194 million, and that's up 16.8%. And thanks to the impressive start to the year, the firm launched a £35 million share buyback at the beginning of the summer, which should be complete by the end of the year. Vistry expects the annual adjusted gross margin to be ahead of its 23% target, thanks to the rise in house prices. Meanwhile, adjusted pre-tax profit is forecast to be £417 million in 2022. That's up solidly from £346 million in 2021. And finally on Thursday, online legal document company DocuSign are due to report their Q2 results. The pandemic darling has seen its share price tank as life returned to normal. After an earnings downgrade in December last year, the share price plummeted and has continued falling since, down over 60% year to date. DocuSign posted a 25% increase in revenue in June of $588.7 million, but adjusted profits missed forecasts. In Q2, DocuSign expected to post revenues of $600 to $604 million, while full-year revenue expected to be $2.48 billion. The share price is currently back at pre-pandemic 2019 levels when revenues were considerably lower, suggesting many of the firm's headwinds are already priced in. The recent deal with Microsoft could be a potential area of growth. Earnings per share expected to be 42 cents. So those were the big stories of the week. Let's wrap up with a quick look at the dividend announcements due out this week. In the FTSE 100, we'll hear from Croda International and CRH. And in the FTSE 250, we'll hear from Baltic Classified Group, XP Power, Gregg, Serco, CLS Holdings, Derwent London, Temple Bar Investments, Grafton Group, Harbour Energy, BBGI, Global Infrastructure and Assura. So there you have it. It's an interesting week for interest rates, but a decidedly uncomfortable week for one Andrew Bailey as he defends the Bank of England's position in the face of inflation soaring 5 times larger than his own target. If I'd failed any of my KPIs by a factor of 5, I think it's a fairly safe bet I'll be down at the job centre in the blink of an eye. But hey, we don't make the rules, we're just here to give our expertise and guidance to help our investors through the slings and arrows of this outrageous type of economics. So as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to click on that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on our regular financial updates with our expert market analysis and opinions. Also, if you haven't tried it already, why not download our app to your phone or tablet if you want to keep updated on the latest financial news, as well, of course, as our award-winning trading signals. So until next time, from all of us here at Atlantic Capital Markets, have yourself a great week.